On this episode of Gear Club, John and Stewart interview Grammy Award-winning engineer and producer Steve Marcantonio. Steve is a staple of the Nashville music scene, but got his start in New York at the record plant under the instruction of the likes of Roy Cicala and Jay Messina. Steve takes us through his journey through the ranks at the record plant, his move to Nashville, and shares some insights on what makes a good assistant and how to get a leg up as an engineer. This interview was recorded at Sear Sound in Studio A during the 2019 AES convention.
So, 1980 circa, I was working with Jay. We're doing it
on what?
With MJ, who was the receptionist.
Yeah.
MJ.
Remember
yes.
MJ?
Yes, Judy, right? She was the receptionist. I was in her band.
Oh, wow.
Jay produced something for us. And you two fucking bozos walked in the room. And it was like, there was an immediate like, fuck you. Hey, what the
Why
fuck?
have you never told me this story before?
I think I have. It was the two of you.
Okay.
And it was like, oh, whoa. This is like knee breaking. I'm going to get my fucking, I better behave.
Dude.
And it was like a code was going around. You and Jay were code.
Oh, right.
And there was some laughing and there was some, okay, let's get out of here.
Hey, look at the Red Sea Pedestrian guitar.
Exactly.
I'll tell you another story, I guess, and I won't name the engineer, the pseudo engineer, but I was the assistant. John was working with us. I forget what the project was. I think it might have been a jingle. And at the end of the session, this particular engineer started laying into me as he normally did. And I had it with him. And I said to him, I said his name. I says, nobody likes you.
He was
You know, and I was this close to hitting him.
Yeah,
and you were behind me. You must have been like,
I was
holy
shitting a
shit.
brick. I was like,
That guy's not doing anything anymore.
I don't know what he's
business,
doing.
So, yeah.
But I mean, I do see him on the social media every now and then. I
Me
think.
too, yes.
But
yes.
but no, I'd never seen you that mad before. It was crazy.
Oh, man.
Well, he was really rude to you. That was really bad.
And I learned from him because that's the other thing too. Is I noticed that coming up in the business, we came up during a time when they were very, like record plant, the engineers would yell at you and embarrass you.
Right.
And that's what it was so militant.
Mm-hmm.
But they wanted to make sure almost like they weeded out those that couldn't take it.
Yeah, couldn't take it.
And now we carry that forward.
Yeah.
But you learn from everybody. And I learned from that guy. You know what I learned? How not to treat
do it,
people.
right.
Yeah.
When did you start there?
I started in May of 78.
And were you on your path? Like, did you know you were going to do it?
Okay, so here it's an interesting story. Of course, I grew up in a musical household. I grew up with my aunt and uncle that lived upstairs from me. My aunt Mary and Uncle Joe. I'm sure you have an Aunt Mary and Uncle Joe. They had two sons who were way older than me and my brothers. They were like 20 years older, Joey and Anthony, a.k.a. Buzzy. And Joey played the bass with his left hand, and Buzzy played drums. And a longer story short, in 64, 65, the Four Seasons original bass player left the band. They had auditions. My cousin Joey won the gig.
Nice.
And I started hanging out with, and he took me in, But all during my childhood, back when the Beatles first came out, we bought albums, and I was like, wow, you buy an album, you look at it, the cover, it's the first time you see what they look like, and then you flip it around, and there might be credits on the back, or you take it out and you see credits. Yeah. So when I bought an album, that's the first thing I did. I read all the credits.
First thing I did, roll a joint on it.
There you go. Especially if it was a double album.
Exactly.
Right? So, cut to the chase. When I was in high school, I started thinking, man, that's what I want to do. Recorded by, that's me. Right. So I was a junior in high school, and I had heard about the Recording Institute of America. And it was located where the Winter Garden. It was located, Allegro Studios. It was downstairs, and the instructor was a guy by the name of Tony May. And I was the youngest kid in the group. They were either musicians or technicians. So for 10 weeks, I went to the city as a junior in high school.
Wow.
Learning nothing. I didn't learn anything because it was all over my head. And I thought, gosh, there's no way I can get into this profession because I'm not a musician. And then I started, right after high school in 75, I started working at General Motors. And in General Motors, every May, they would lay off the staff and they would retool for the next model. So I was there 76, 77, and then in 78, they laid us off from May to September. And I thought, man, I got my whole summer. I'm getting paid 95% of my pay. I'm living.
Oh, so they laid you off, but you were getting...
Oh, yes. And we didn't have to go to unemployment. We went right to the union, got our check every 2 weeks.
Fantastic.
Bada bing, and I'm thinking I'm going to be down the shore. And I see my cousin Joey. He came over the house. I said, hey, Joe, how you doing? He says, yeah, I was talking to my friend, and all of a sudden on the third line, my old friend Roy Cicala chimed in. And when he said Roy Cicala, I said, wait, I saw that name. I said, really? You know Roy
Walls and
Cicala?
Bridges?
Well, just reading several
Right, okay,
records.
gotcha.
It might have been Walls and Bridges, whatever, which, we had that record. And my cousin Joey, of course, said, oh, yeah, you want me to introduce you to him? And so I went to the record plant,
that's
met
fantastic.
Roy, and he took me in like that.
And he said, go watch some
well,
bathrooms.
No, it wasn't that way. Believe it or not, I got a break. I became Roy's boy.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
that too.
We had 2 janitors.
Right.
We
Who
had
did that
2
shit.
accountants full time.
But what they had, what I had to do, and the same thing as you,
Yeah,
you trained
general.
me. You basically logged in the tapes.
Right.
You cleaned the rooms. You made sure the pencils were sharp. You made sure they were grease pencils.
Mic inventory.
Yeah.
And
Every
we had
day.
a great system.
Every day.
And it was simple, but it was
You
great.
got to
So-
check it every day.
Every day. You
Every
check the
day,
mics.
yes.
You had to count for every mic.
Because if a mic gets stolen or lost, you can. Oh, who was
know
here
whose
last
session
night?
it was,
Yeah,
right.
So.
Right.
And outboard, straightening out things, and then in the upstairs in the library where there was always things to do. That we had, we were known as generals because we
Right.
did general duties. But Roy, I was kind of like Roy's boy the whole summer. I was just with him, and then in September when I was called back to GM, I asked Roy, and he hired me. And the manager of the studio, Paul Sloman, at the time was really pissed off because he hired people. That was his job. So Roy, kind of said, here's a new employee. So I had to prove to Paul that I was good.
Yeah, but you did.
though-
He was a good guy.
Oh, yeah.
You got along with him great,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. But I was privy to a lot of things with Roy, and Roy had kind of taken a hiatus because he had worked with John Lennon for all those years. So he started getting back into the studio, messing around, and they produced Orleans and Garland Jeffries, and I was in on those sessions.
Wow.
That's
so,
amazing.
Yeah.
And did you know at that point you were still learning?
Oh.
You
Oh,
didn't, like you were still learning on the fly, right?
Yeah. I mean, the terminology. Let's gate the chamber. Send a bus to. I was like, what is he talking about? Tele-Pultec. What's Tele-Pultec? And I was just telling someone in Nashville the first time I actually heard compression was probably after a year in the business.
Yeah. Right.
I didn't know what it was, and we had a shop where we had a radio, and we would go in there and listen, and sure enough, our mixes were coming through there, and back in those days, the radio. Private,
20 to 1,
what do
yeah.
you call, not, it wasn't all owned by one company.
Right,
There was
right.
So you heard the songs on that, and you heard what it did to
Yeah.
your record. So,
Right.
I don't think even back then we didn't do separate mixes for singles. It was what was on the album was the single.
Right.
And then also we had like a 5-person staff and maintenance.
Right.
And they were all, during the day there was 4 of them, and then there was one at night, Paul Prestopino. A god. During the day, there was a few of them that were strictly high tech, and they explained everything to me in technical terms, and I didn't understand what they were saying.
Right.
There was one guy though that was really down to earth, Steve Barish,
Yes.
and
He reaches out to me like every 6 months.
really?
Yeah, he got my,
Oh,
he had my
man.
phone number somehow.
what a great guy he
Yeah.
was. And I said, "What is a bus? What is a bus, Steve?" He says, "Well, okay, let's say you want to go from here to New Jersey, right? You go to the Port Authority and you get a bus. The bus takes you from here to there." And explained it. I mean, that's very common, and that's what so I learned like that way.
And you came right after him?
No, like a year. I came in 79.
Right.
I was just amazed at the entire staff, and just seeing Greg Caruso and J.K. and Rod, and you see these guys coming in and out, and it was definitely a fraternity. Jay Messina,
Shelley
Jack,
was Shelley the chief engineer?
Shelley was the chief engineer
When you started, yeah.
and Dave Thoner, his career had taken off by that time, so he was all over the place.
Right.
But then I remember, my first day into the record. Well, of course, I had met Roy at the record plant, but then I came back on a Monday. I was hanging out. I spent almost the entire summer, as an intern there. And the first day I checked in at 8 on my own time with Ross. They said, meet Ross on the 8th floor. Okay. So it's like, they said, meet him at 8 o'clock. And of course I was there at 7:30, which doesn't happen anymore. And Ross came in, and we go up to the 10th floor. He opens up the lock of the door. We walk in, and there's a lounge right there to Studio C.
See.
And who's laying there, sleeping on the couch and the floor, but the whole Blondie band. They were doing parallel lines. And I remember even before that, I was walking around, and Lou Reed was walking through the halls. And I remember J.K. going, "That's Lou Reed," like pointing, and So right off the bat, I was like, "Oh my gosh," you know. And once again, they had to filter out those that wouldn't act cool around them, you know. So, seeing I love telling that story too. Seeing Blondie laying there, and I remember walking past Studio
When you
C.
say doing parallel lines, you mean the record
recording. Oh yeah, yeah. I'm sure they were doing that. Boom. But I remember the door to Studio C was open. Mike Chapman was producing, who I got to work with. We can talk about him later. Gray Russell was the assistant, and Peter Coleman was the engineer.
That's like a fantastic team.
Yes, Peter Coleman had headphones on because Mike listened so loud.
Yeah.
And headphones on unplugged, you know. But that was a big impact to me, and I knew I was going to love it, you know.
Did you, like after Roy, did you latch on to an engineer or a producer?
Several. Bob Tischler was a producer. Actually, Bob came from the Second City TV. Like, is that with Belushi and all them? Right. He started out there. I think they had something to do with Mad Magazine too, maybe. But Bob was part of that Second City TV group, and then he caught on and was the producer of the Blues Brothers.
Oh, right.
So he had done Briefcase Full of Blues, and then the next record was the soundtrack.
Right.
And he had, he always requested me. J.K. was his engineer, but Bob did most of the engineering.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time with Bob Tischler. He produced a few acts after that. But the Blues Brothers record lasted for like 9 months.
Wow.
And I remember that during that time...
It took that long to make?
Yeah. Because they were doing things in Chicago, bringing them to New York. We were overdubbing, redoing things. And
you spent a lot of time with Paul Schaefer, right?
Paul Schaefer.
He was all over that record.
And it was a 48 track. And that was when they just came out with the BTX unit, that white board. And I got to know it really well. So in the middle of doing that record, I think it was September of that year, it was 80, John Lennon came in for a day. And they wanted me to do that session because I knew the BTX.
Machines, right.
Bob didn't want to let go of me.
Oh, wow.
And you know what? I thought to myself, I should have never implied, it's like, he's like Roy always told me, he says, stick with whoever you're working with. Don't get blown away by a name. Right. So I learned that. And the other thing that happened during that project that September was my, 5-year high school reunion. And I put the music together. And I asked JK, I said, JK, can I get off Saturday for my reunion? He goes, Steve, how often are you going to get to work with the Blues Brothers? You can always go to a reunion. Right. And I learned a lesson then. And he was right. So I didn't go, but we had 3-4 more after that. Yeah. And, it was, a lot of lessons learned during that time. Yeah. But Bob Tischler, William Whitman, who John wound up working a lot with. I was, he and I worked a bunch of things.
Well, did he work with Mike Chapman as well?
Yes, he did. Yeah. And I worked on the Scandal record.
Right. And remember, I was working on the Twisted Sister record.
Oh my God! Oh. Didn't one night I got
but also remember the fire.
Oh, no.
Remember the blankets caught fire? We had to empty both rooms.
I don't remember that, John. I don't remember that. Sorry.
Smoke. Wow. The fire alarms went off.
Yeah, I mean, there was a period between 80 and 82 that are pretty foggy.
Right, and there was a lot of fires and smoke alarms.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot of fire,
but
it was smoke. And we had the firemen came in and it was bad.
When did you make the move to Nashville?
Okay, so I became a full-fledged engineer in '84, and
you left the record plant.
No. I was a staff engineer there.
Record plant had staff engineers, as you know. So he just moved up the ladder. It was
4 or 5 or 6 staff engineers and assistants. Yeah, I just moved up the ladder. And when you became a staff engineer, they no longer paid your salary.
The client paid.
No, in other words, like when I was a second engineer, I got paid through record plant. But being a first engineer, you didn't make a salary unless you worked.
Oh, got it. Right, I see.
Yeah. So it was a big step to make. But in 80, I think it was 86, Dave was working with Rodney Crowell.
Yes,
Rodney
which is how you met Stewart? Probably.
Well, I met Stewart in Nashville with Rodney.
Yeah.
But in 80, I want to say it was 86 or 88, maybe it was 86. Dave was working with Rodney on a solo record. And he needed some work done. Rodney wanted to punch in on something that was recorded way back. So Dave asked me to engineer up in C, and I matched it perfectly and did it. And Rodney remembered that. And in 87, he called me up out of the blue. And he called me Steve Mark because Steve Barish was Steve. I was Steve Mark. And to this day, I just spoke to Rodney last week. He still calls me Steve Mark.
We all call you Steve Mark.
Yeah. So he called me up and he told me that he was recording a few songs with Roseanne Cash, who he was married to at the time. He was going to record a few songs for a best of. He says, "You want to come down and engineer them?" I said, "Sure." So I flew down to Nashville, and that turned into King's Record Shop.
Yeah, her big hit.
Yeah, well, I guess so. It was like critically acclaimed, but yeah.
I think in her career that's been a pivotal record.
Yeah, I guess you could say so. Yeah. So I did that with Rodney, and it opened the doors for me because it was fairly it didn't sell records, but everyone loved it.
Yeah.
And she's legendary, Johnny Cash's daughter. That
exactly.
But that actually put her into her own place.
Yeah. But I'm saying there's like so many different angles on that record that really.
Yeah. So I flew to Nashville, checked into a hotel right on Broadway there. And then someone picked me up, and it was Stewart and Michael Rhodes, who is a Class A bass player. They were in Rodney's band,
right?
And they played on Roseanne's sessions.
Right.
Yeah. So we got together and went to Rodney and Roseanne's house, which is in Brentwood, which is the next city next to mine. So from where the hotel to Brentwood was maybe 15, 20 minutes, and it was in fact in the woods. I felt like we were going. It was like, oh my gosh, we're going in the country, deep into the country. What is this, And now that house that was the only house for miles now are huge apartment complexes,
Was Vinnie Santoro on that?
Yes, Vinnie is a very dear friend of mine. He was the drummer. And
love Vinnie.
So I got together with them, and we went in and cut a few songs, and then Rodney wanted to make a record out of it, and I went down there a few more times and eventually mixed it. And then from there, I did Rodney's record.
Down there, again.
Down there, yeah. Rodney did a record the following year called, what is it? It was his first solo record in years, and the first 5 singles, which he wrote, were all number ones.
Yeah.
Diamonds and Dirt. And that was a big monumental occasion, that it was first 5 singles, and that was a blast. And I got to meet Tony Brown, who produced Rodney Crowell. Right. Tony Brown is he was the vice president of MCA or
Elvis's piano player.
Elvis's last piano player.
You're still super close to him, right?
I'm very close to Tony.
Yeah.
He produced it, and I met him, so I started doing projects with Tony. Who then, and Rodney and Roseanne also.
He was the king of Nashville.
Yes. He had a Porsche, and on the plate said "busy" on it. Tony's a very, very dear friend, and he had stories of Elvis that blew my mind. But Rodney and Roseanne introduced me to another cat who was from Chicago, moved to L.A., got in with the Eagle guys, Timothy Schmidt, and even though he wasn't in the Eagles at then, but he was close to Don the other one, Glenn Frey. And he also played with Jack Mack and the Heart Attack and some other bands. Josh Leo is his name.
Oh yeah.
You know Josh?
He became an executive.
He was A&R at RCA Records.
That's right.
And I probably did at least 10 projects with him. He was producing.
And you still hadn't moved? Or
I still hadn't moved.
So you were just...
I was not convinced that... there's no... I got down there and I couldn't even find a good sandwich. You know what I mean?
Italian.
That's like, John, Subway, that's not a sandwich.
I know. I live in
I'm
Raleigh.
Going back and forth. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to live in Nashville. But 5 years commuting, and 92, we got married in 89. 92, we had my first son, and we got an apartment because I was doing maybe 9 to 10 months out of the year there. So 95 is when I officially lived there full time. But I was basically living there from 92.
Yeah. But those were some rockin' studio years.
Oh yeah, the 90s, and some of the 2000s. Yeah, and the thing is that actually the 80s too. The guy that made that all possible, believe it or not, it was Jimmy Bowen.
Right.
Do you know who Jimmy Bowen is?
I know who he is. Yeah, sure.
I don't know who he is.
Well, Jimmy Bowen was in charge of Capitol Records, but he was an LA guy. Jimmy Bowen, amongst many other things, produced That's Life, Candyman, and what was Dean Martin? I forget what song he did with Dean Martin, but he produced Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis, amongst many other things.
Right.
And Bowen came to Nashville, and he brought everything, all the modern technology he brought. He demanded it all there. And I think we were using digital in Nashville before New York.
Right.
I'm pretty sure of that.
From town.
So he made a mark down there, did Bowen. The
you
studio...
were on the radar?
Sorry?
Were you on the radar at that? like Radar or Pro
Well,
Tools?
I was there in '87, so yeah. As a matter of fact, yes. And Bowen had a very unique way of doing things, which I can't get into everything, but he had a pool of engineers that would do different things. And I heard of his style, and I don't know if I want to do that. And he tried to hire me a couple of times, but it never happened.
Right.
But he respected me. I respected him. And but yeah, the studios there were really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I, like I said to you before, that they were so used to recording everybody at the same time. And I remember when we did Rodney's record, we cut I don't know how many songs are on there, maybe 10 or 12. We cut them all in I think 3 days or 4 days. But when you leave the studio, all you have to do is lead and background vocals and maybe a little guitar.
Yeah.
And that helps too, because, when you start overdubbing everything, you should know this as a musician, a guitar player, you might play a certain thing, and then you get the next guy to overdub. Well, he can't do what he wants to do because you play those notes. So if you're live, you can
arrange
hey, wait, let me
on the
lay
spot.
out here. So yeah, that's the way it happens. And like I said, to this day, it's still like that. You do a full band.
So when you say full band, you mean like 6 players?
Well, bass, drums, guitar, keyboards, at least.
Yeah.
And
At
in
least.
most cases, 2 guitars, acoustic, electric, and sometimes steel.
Right.
And sometimes 2 keyboard players.
Right.
And a vocal.
Did you ever work with Rick Chertoff?
Of course.
Yes, I did.
Okay, do you know this? He's sort of the pivotal thing to so many people you just mentioned. So as A&R at
Arista.
he was started at Arista, and then he went to Columbia.
Okay.
After Cindy's record, he went to Columbia. But he went down to Baltimore, D.C. Someone told him to look at this band. He saw the band. He passed on the band, but put a little note in his box. And then 3 years later...
I know you're going to say who it is.
Right. So Rodney comes to New York, and Rick is his A&R guy.
Oh, Columbia.
And he comes to New York, and Rodney says, "Look, I need to put a new band together." He tells his secretary at the time, "I got this guy down in Baltimore. Call him."
Oh, I
Stewart
see.
Smith's playing in a band down there.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
and
cool.
then he goes, "Yeah," and he goes, "Come up. I want you to meet this guy." He meets Rodney. He goes, he plays with Rodney. They click, and Rodney goes, "I need a drummer." He goes, "Vinnie Santoro, who was in Stewart's band down there."
wow, yeah.
So Stewart and Vinnie are all
cool.
connected.
Yeah.
And then he winds up down there, and they become Rodney's band, and then Roseanne's band.
Yeah.
He's involved in all of this.
Yeah.
Small.
Yeah, it's small. It's such a small world, which is one
but
of the
Rick,
songs
that
from
one phone
Roseanne.
call Rick made that he
Right.
saved to call Stewart.
That's a great story. I didn't realize that, but I remember when I was still affiliated with the record plant, and I got a call to do something in Nashville, and I mentioned it to Rick. I says, "Rick, I'm doing something with Alabama." He goes, "Wow, that's great, Steve." And I didn't expect him, and he was serious.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. Yeah. And Vinnie Santoro, believe it or not, is an incredible singer.
Great singer.
Unbelievable, man. I spent some time
Great
with him
singer.
in Virginia too. Yeah, and he's got that little
still has
tail.
it?
And I remember
He's had it 25 years.
And I remember
shaved head, little thing coming out.
bald head with the
Yeah.
little thing there. And I remember at the Opry, the first time I went to the Opry was when I first got down there, and Rodney was playing there. So I go and I'm hanging. I don't know if you've ever been to the Opry, but
never.
if you get. It's at the Opry Land, which is where the theater is. They
Right.
moved from the Ryman to there
Right.
because it's bigger. And when you get a pass backstage, you can actually stand on the side of the stage and watch the performance. And they had this, whoever was the MC that night was this big country guy. There's Rodney Crowd. And he comes out, and Vinny's over there playing drums. And he goes over by Vinny while he's playing and just goes like that with the tail. And I got so, I was like, who the hell does this guy think he is? I thought that was so weird, But those were good times, man. And I'm still in touch with Rodney and Roseanne.
Awesome. And so no looking back. You never...
No. I've tried to steer some of my friends down here.
Yeah.
I love living down there, but there's certain things I miss here.
Right.
But I think overall, I don't regret it.
Right.
And now I see people starting to move down there.
Yeah.
And they're
Well, career-wise, you couldn't have picked a better time to
better
live
time.
in New
Right,
York.
best
Right,
possible
exactly.
career.
all,
Yeah.
all the great recording system, every studio system
right.
is dissipated.
Yeah. And believe it or not, they're building studios in Nashville.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. So.
Yeah, Music Row is pretty fascinating.
Well, Music Row has changed too. It's not Music Row.
It's still
Music Row is now in Berry Hill.
Oh,
you know
okay.
Berry Hill?
No.
It's its own city, but it has a Nashville address. They have a post office and a police station. It's just right off the road from Nashville, and that's where all the studios are. Ryan Hewitt is there. Vance Powell is there.
Yeah.
The whole 9 yards.
But what are the studios? Because I went to visit friends there last September. The guy took me down Music Row.
Yeah, Music Row. There's Ocean Way on Music Row,
Right.
which is an incredible studio. I mean, a great big room. Then they got another smaller room. Emerald Studios used to be there. The structure is still there, but someone else owns it, and the console is gone. It's just all, 500 series modules and stuff, and they do mostly demos there.
Okay, gotcha.
Where's Blackbird?
Blackbird is in Berry Hill.
Right.
And all these other places are in Berry Hill. A lot of publishing places there. Vintage King and Westlake Pro are there.
Oh, wow.
And it's definitely a scene there.
Have you worked at Blackbird?
All the time.
And
all the time.
It's pretty amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah. I was just with John. He would have been a good host to have, too. John McBride. When it first opened up, John... First of all, he came and visited the sound kitchen where I worked a lot. We had this room there, the Big Boy, and he got ideas from all these other studios of what he wanted to do.
Right.
And he was Garth Brooks's sound guy. Did you know that?
No.
Okay, he ran sound, and he basically started Clare Brothers.
Oh.
So he had gobs of outboard live.
Right.
He had the V76s for preamps for live.
Right.
And he started Blackbird, and he just wanted to open up the best facility so that every engineer that works there...
So he came from a live background.
Live background.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yes. And then he just went crazy and bought the land next to him and built all these rooms. And, he...
I hear the mic collections.
Oh, he's got... And that was the thing, too. When they first opened up, it was braggadocio. So, hey, do you have any 250? Yeah, we got 25 251s. But, and, when you go there, you can't believe what they have. Right. It's just, out of control. And it's definitely well worth going there, How
many rooms?
I think there's a total of about 8 rooms. But there's only 2 real tracking rooms, although you can track drums in a couple of other rooms. But their main tracking rooms, there's 2 of them,
right.
And then he had George Massenberg's room. Did you ever hear about that room at all?
I don't think so.
George made this room that basically it was square, but the walls were made... The walls were made, and then these flat boards he had milled to all these points that come out. It's kind of hard to describe, but if you took a flat board like this, and then you cut here
So like
and made
slats
a hole,
in the wall.
slats in the wall.
Okay, gotcha.
And everyone came out a different amount of space. None of them were the same. There was over like 10,000 of them or something.
Right.
So when you walk into this room, it's like, whoa, But it was it dispersed the sound.
Right.
So his idea was to have this room, and he did sessions all in the room. Everybody in the room. They bought an SSL 9K.
Right.
What they did was they took the 9K out and they bought a 48 channel 4K, an old SSL console. You wouldn't believe, and they were just about to install it, and John got a call from Dolby and said, would you be interested in having an Atmos room in your studio? One thing leads to another.
You rebuilt the room?
They shelved that SSL, and in about 2 weeks built an Atmos room.
Wow.
Have you seen pictures of it?
I have not.
Are you familiar with Atmos at all?
Yes.
I'm not.
So have you been in an Atmos room?
No. There's one down on Broadway now.
Really?
On the Bowery, yeah.
Yeah, we've got maybe 4 in Nashville.
Right.
Basically what it is speakers all around you.
Right.
Atmos is short for atmosphere.
Right.
And the one John has, ATC had to build special speakers for him because he couldn't put any on the ceiling. So these Atmos speakers are pointing like this. And they're massive, know. So you've got speakers all around you, behind you, in front of you. So John put this together for Summer NAMM. And I think Dolby might be behind John in doing this.
Right.
But so they had a listening party. So that afternoon I went early because I wanted to hear it. And David Leonard lives in Nashville. Do you know who David Leonard is?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
What about Bill Whitman?
He's going to listen to this.
I don't care. But anyway. No, so anyway, David has some amazing Prince stories.
Right.
And the one he told me that was amazing was he says, you mix for Princeton, you wait for him. You just wait around. He comes in, listens, and it could be another 5-10 hours of mixing. He came in this one night, listened to the song, muted one instrument, and said, "Print it." And Dave was like, "Whoa, wait, I got to rebounce. Nope, don't touch anything. Print it like that." It was the bass he muted.
Wow.
When Doves Cry.
Whoa.
Wow.
Genius.
There's no bass
Production
on
move,
When
right.
Doves Cry. So the first song David played for me was When Doves Cry.
Oh, boy.
So I got a personal...
On the
it was
Atmos.
it was just me and David, and there was someone else in the room, and that song came on. I went, "Did you put the bass in?" He goes, "No." But, hearing that in Atmos was amazing.
But so did he remix it for
Yes.
Atmos?
Oh, yes,
and,
yes.
And what's the process? Like, how do you do that?
It's incredibly convoluted, should I
Right.
say. What they do is they pre-mix it. So they have engineers that mix it. Like what they do is they take the old recordings and they get the tracks. In some cases, their tracks not available, just stems.
Right.
But you get all the tracks and you match as close as possible the record. And then once that's in a session, that then gets handed to an Atmos mixer, who then takes that session and does all his spiel with it. But
So
when
what?
you're-
All different things are coming out of different speakers.
Yes, and there's a graph where you can see the sound appearing.
Right.
But when you're mixing in Atmos, it goes through 3 different computers. It's very convoluted, and I was told by some of the mixers that when they print them, they have to make sure there's all these certain things that you have to abide by, But they're looking to get all of them. I think Abbey Road is in Atmos, right?
But is the end result supposed to be that we're going to get Atmos systems at home to listen to?
What is the end result? That's what a lot
Or is
of
it for movies? Or?
Well, that's a good point.
Right.
Now, I do know in Nashville at Belmont University, which is a music school, they have a theater in Atmos, and it sounds amazing. So when you go see a movie, forget about it. As far as like, if you own a home, are you going to put speakers in your ceiling and no? So they're going to come up with something.
Something, right?
But I must say, sitting at Blackbird, I stood outside of the atmosphere, and I can feel it.
Wow.
So I'm thinking that some of these people that are building new homes or that have existing homes with nice big living rooms,
just put it in there.
It would be amazing to have at your house.
But
Just
what
to
are
hear
these
that
at-
in the background.
What do these Atmos engineers actually do? Like, what are they doing when you hand your files over to them?
I'm hopefully going to learn that.
Oh, okay.
They have
So
to
they're trained specially. They're trained specially to do what they do.
Yes, but then it's just up to them what they want to do.
Right.
Like Rocket Man was on Atmos.
Right.
The steel it goes
Yeah.
like that. And
Right.
and there's just different things happening all around you. And as the mixer,
Fame, fame,
exactly.
fame.
I think is that not mixed? No. I think most of the Atmos mixes was done by a specific label.
Right.
Yeah. We just are fans of that.
Fame.
Fame.
Oh,
Yeah, the voice going higher.
You know how they did that, right? Ask Dave Thoner, because he was there when they did it.
Really?
Yes.
He recorded that?
He was the assistant engineer on the project.
We heard it was the Publisan Infernal Machine.
No.
So many legends.
Publisan was not invented by
Okay,
them.
so what is it?
It was, they started at, what does it start? Does it start high? Right, it goes low,
Yeah.
right? So they slowed down the tape and gradually sped it up. And you
Gotcha.
say, fame,
Yeah.
and then went,
And then
fame, and then
did
when
they-
they played it normal, it
So they
started-
bounced it. They bounced it to like a half inch, slowing it down.
Well, I don't know if David might have sung Fame while they were doing that. I'm not sure of that.
Oh, okay.
But Dave Thoner would let you know because he was there.
Oh, that's amazing.
And you remember we had at the record plant, there was only one way of slowing down a tape machine. You had to bring in the oscillator.
Yeah.
And the
right.
oscillator was in a rack that
Yeah.
was this high.
Yeah.
And the knob for the oscillator, no lie, was at least
Bigger than your head.
It was like the inside of a record. It was that wide.
Yeah.
And, you had to just slightly. And, while we're on this subject, I walked into a session John McBride was doing, and he did this intro, and he says, Steve, check it out. And it was all this really weird effects stuff. I said, John, years ago, that would have taken us a day. He goes,
Yeah.
I did it in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And that led me to talking about how we used to do things like, do you remember doing like backwards solos?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that's like,
flipping
it
the
could have
machine.
been like a day event.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but also remember, backward solos, if you didn't do the math right, you erased
the wrong track. Right.
And that's what I tell these kids. It's like you're working, you could be there 12 hours and you might partake in the activities. Then all of a sudden the producer says, hey, let's do it backwards.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Well, can I also say the key of the backwards of
knowing you are in backward.
well,
in
that,
reverse.
but also it's everything. Every track combination adds to 25. 124, 223, 322.
Oh wow!
Yeah, 421.
Why didn't I know that,
I
John?
never told you. That was my little thing. I figured that out super early on.
To me, the trickiest part was flipping the tape because you had to like bend a
bend it
reel
up,
over
right.
and not crinkle
the tape.
Yeah. And then you had to start it like you would get the solo, you would stop at the end of the solo plus a couple bars, and then you'd flip it over, and then you would get used to that sound of the solo, and then it was up to the guitar player
to know
play
where he was.
a really cool melody.
Yeah.
You can't replicate that in Pro Tools. I don't think you can.
Right.
I had some guy doing trying to do feedback backwards, and I said it's just going to be the same, dude.
Feedback backwards.
No, but he was making holding notes.
Oh,
and I was like, dude, that's just going to be. It's going to sound the same.
But
like, what do you mean?
But the thing is, though, Stewart, you spent a few hours doing that. Maybe you did spend a day doing it.
Yeah.
You never know.
Totally.
But when it was done and you played it back, you sit there and you're like, the smiles on the face. Yeah. And you had a sense of euphoria.
Yeah. Right. And it was a commitment.
And
you
it was
had
a commitment.
To make it.
And it was like, you felt like, I helped do that.
Right.
That's gone.
Right.
And the other thing, too, that comes to mind, John, too, is, we did all these projects. We'd be in the same room with the same two people for months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So by the end of the project, there would be mega stories to tell.
Yeah.
Or gimmicks or bits.
Yeah, constantly.
Those days are gone.
Right. Well, you probably weren't in. You were in different rooms.
Yeah. He
for
assisted me just a few times,
Right.
But he took over my gig with Bill Whitman when I moved up, and he was Bill's assistant. I forget what I was working on during the time you did Cindy.
I forget.
Because I didn't work on Cindy's record.
I think you were probably working with Thoner.
I might have been. I'm not sure what it was.
Were.
Yeah.
Well, we did Cindy and B. So
what year was Cindy?
84? No, maybe 82, 83.
Yeah. And I saw Cindy last year. You
did?
At
Live?
Well, Cindy did a record down there.
Oh, the country
With
record.
Bill, Tony produced
with
it.
Tony Brown.
Yes.
Oh, did Bill play on it?
Bill engineered
Bill
it.
engineered it
Oh,
and mixed it,
nice.
and Tony was blown away.
She's made a bunch of records.
But that record she did, I don't know if you heard it.
I
mean,
I think it might have won a Grammy.
she is an amazing singer,
Yeah,
man.
she sure is.
She's a performer. She's
sure
got a
is.
very unique voice, and her concert was incredible.
Yeah.
Really was.
You still have family in New York?
I do.
Hey,
Well,
you know what? You have a niece
yes,
who works at the
yes.
Metropolitan.
Very, very proud of her.
Who, you know what? Jay called me, and he said, "Hey, I got an in," and she took us on.
Did you go with him?
I did. I went with Jay.
Jay and Jack? Was
No,
Jack?
he went twice.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And she took us on
Aileen. Yeah.
this amazing tour
Yes.
of the rock and roll exhibit.
Play It Loud.
Play It Loud.
She went to school for art, and she had a part-time job at the Met. And then all of a sudden, this project came up, and she said, "Uncle Steve, we're going to be doing a thing with all the iconic instruments of rock and roll." And I gave her some tips. I gave her some names and stuff. I think she spent over a year and a half on it.
It's incredible.
And then she was made up. Now she's working there full time. But she helped put that together. You're not aware of that? It was at the Met.
He told me about it.
So they're like Keith Emerson's keyboard and who's somebody's guitar, whatever. And there's a book out for it.
It's unbelievable.
But what it was that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame put it on,
Right.
and exhibited it here.
Yeah.
Now it's moving to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, where my
really?
wife lives.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's not here anymore?
No,
It's
it's closed.
okay.
So in November, they're
timing
going to
is
have the
impeccable.
grand opening there, and Aileen's going to be there, and I'm going to be there.
Nice.
Yeah. It's
Tell
gonna
us
be
about
cool.
Vince Gill.
yeah.
Okay, Vince Gill is like, I talk. Well, when I talk about John Lennon, I mean, I was in a studio
let's
with
talk
John
about
Lennon
John
for a week.
Lennon.
How about John Lennon? I didn't just give him coffee. He was a friend of mine. No. When the thing I could say about John was that he was the most down to earth guy I worked with.
Amazing.
He was just friends with everybody.
Were you there the night?
Oh yeah. Well, I said goodnight to him, and an hour later he was gone. Yeah, and I'd spent 8 straight days with him.
Now, that was the mix room at the record.
Yes.
So,
Willie was in one of those rooms. that
maybe.
night.
Willie was in
spoken.
A.
Yeah.
I remember seeing him sitting on the couch, just shocked.
Yeah.
But Vince is, I'm not comparing him to John Lennon, but he's very down to earth.
Right.
I consider him a dear friend. He is so talented, so funny.
How many records you've made with him?
I've only made 2 records with him.
Gotcha.
on one of his records, just when I say recently, maybe 10 years ago, he did a double album. He goes, Steve, I want you to come and hear a track. And he brought me in while they were tracking. And he had laid down a vocal, and the whole band was there, and I'm listening to it. And it's like, and then he's singing the song, and it was "Cowboy Up" was the name of the song. And all of a sudden, he sings, "It was a girl. It was a girl," and he says the name of the girl. The girl was Levitra Marcantonio, like that, and it goes right by me. And I go, "Did you just say Marcantonio?" And everybody in the room was cracking up. I said, Vince, did you just put that down?
Actually, that sings very well.
It does. So I said, did you do that just as a guy? And sure enough, I mixed him live at the Opry, and he sang that song. So my name is in one of his songs.
Great.
But Vince is, he's just a really nice guy. Like in his studio, he's got guitars set up, acoustic guitars, which I didn't record much in New York.
Right.
And there's an art of recording an acoustic guitar. And some of these acoustics, like Vince had maybe 20 of them laid out
in his studio, right? I've seen a picture of that.
Yeah, but on stands on the floor. Yeah. But now he's changed it, so now they're up top.
Right.
But the acoustic guitars, I'm sure, had to total $1 million. And then he had all these electric guitars, and there were stories for some of them. It's like that one there. My ex-brother-in-law was going to lose his farm, and he wanted to sell that guitar. So he's a generous man.
Right.
You know, him and Amy Grant, his wife.
Right.
And there was
he's married to Amy Grant?
Yes.
The Amy Grant?
Yeah.
The Amy Grant.
Nice.
Have you seen him in the Eagles yet?
No, I haven't.
Wait, Vince is in the Eagles?
Oh, yeah.
He replaced Glenn Fry.
Yeah.
But him, for you, it would be a treat because he's here and Stewart's here.
Oh,
Joe Walsh.
And, you know, I remember Stewart, when we were working in Nashville together, he used to bring his guitar back to the hotel and practice all the time. All the time. He's just amazing. And he's so frantic, sort of, you know. I love him. Well, I worked with Steven Tyler because he did a record in Nashville.
Right.
And, you know, Steven is amongst many people, you know, and he mentioned Johnny Depp. And he brought in this instrument. He goes, yeah, this was that Johnny had one of these. It was called a sig-tar, as in cigar tar. And you get a cigar box with a resonator in it and the neck.
Right.
And Steven had an old wine crate that was the amp. He goes, here, check this out. I got, you know, Johnny Depp had one. And it looked so archaic. At that time, Dan Huff was producing.
Yeah.
Do you know who Dan
Guitar
is?
player.
Yeah.
Sure.
Guitar player, producer.
Yeah.
Amazing. He made that thing sound so incredible, man. That's another topic that I would like to discuss is Dan Huff.
Yeah.
Sure.
But he started as a session player.
Oh, yeah. When I came there in '87, he was in L.A. And then he moved back to Nashville. And he started Nash Vegas.
That's
he
right.
started playing sessions, and I remember recording him on sessions, you know. And the thing about Dan is that he was so into it. And I remember, you know, down there it's union workers, all union session players. So the session players work on a 3-hour session, and then they're due an hour break.
Right.
So in Nashville, we start early because everyone has families. That's the best thing about Nashville is you get done
normal
early.
schedule.
It's a normal schedule. Start at 10, 3 hours to 1. 1 hour off, 3.
Right.
I mean, a 2.
Right.
So down there, they say a 10 and a 2, or a 10, 2, and 6, or sometimes they say I have a double, I have a triple. So, you know, Dan always likes to get done at 6 o'clock, you know, but Dan, so I'm working on a project with Dan, with Josh producing, and we used to have catering. 1 o'clock. All right, come on, guys, let's go. Dan's like, you know what? I want to get this solo. Can I just get this solo? So I would have to stay with Dan to get this solo.
Miss your lunch.
Right. Like, you know, and I should remind them about that. But I've been working with Dan, you know, for the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so. And I've never seen anyone produce like that. He's just really incredible. And, you know, I'm getting old in my time. I'm getting very spiritual, reflective, and I sit there sometimes while he's producing, and I think to myself, man, he could have gotten anybody to do this, and he picked me.
Awesome.
And I think, how lucky am I to see him do his magic? And he's just incredibly musical, and
But he obviously appreciates what you bring in the room.
Oh yeah, yes. And you know what it is too with Dan. As a producer of a record, you're producing the music, but you're also casting certain characters.
Yeah.
You know, not only musicians, but the engineer.
energy, right.
Yeah. So I'm in a pool of certain engineers that he uses.
Right.
But I'm also friends with him family-wise. I know his family. His brother David was with Dan in a band called Giant many years ago.
Oh, I remember them.
And David is in Nashville again. He moved to LA. He's back. And David is a drummer programmer, and he does a lot of stuff for Dan. And
do you go to the Bluebird or
no? I've been to the Bluebird.
Right.
I remember going to the Bluebird to see Sean Colvin play one night, and I was one of maybe 5 people in the audience.
Right.
And she played by herself.
Right.
And it was amazing.
She's great.
The Bluebird is totally a tourist trap.
It is.
They still
it
do.
used to be a Writers in the
Well,
Round
it is
thing.
still that way.
Right.
It is that way. But people come from out of town. What's to do in
It's
Nashville?
like
Go to the Bluebird.
It's like the Blue Note here.
Right. Yeah, but the thing is, though, a lot of people started out at the Bluebird.
Right.
Trisha Yearwood, amongst many people, started out there.
Right.
You could still go there as an amateur open mic night, but you have to send them something in advance.
Do you think you're like whoever might discuss you down there? Go, he's that guy from New York.
Yeah. Well,
Does the reputation precede you?
yes. Like Dan loves showing me off to people that know me. This is the Marcantonio, he says, you know.
The
and a lot of
Marc-
times people will make fun of the way I talk.
Yeah. Why?
Even though, well, it's funny you should say that because some of my friends in
We
Jersey,
understand you.
some of my friends in Jersey think I have a country accent.
Right.
But, you know, down there, it's obvious that I'm not from around here.
I mean, it
From
looks
around
like
there.
when
Around
you're
there.
talking, though, I love about you, you look like you're trying to land planes. Like the hands are moving so much. It's like, and then Stewart Smith did this, and then...
One other thing too is I have a shirt. My friend Mark Rubel from Blackbird Academy bought me a shirt. He says, "I'm not yelling. I'm Italian." And when I'm in a session, the first thing, "Hey, can I hear some guitar?" They go, "Can you lower the talk back?" It's funny.
And so, but you guys have stayed in touch over the years.
Oh
all the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, we you know, there's been a couple of hurdles. You know, we worked on a record together, and we had to work on his birthday, and I got off on my birthday, and he never forgave me for it.
What record?
It was the Jay Giles record. It was the Giles Band record.
At the record plant?
Yeah, when they got rid of Peter Wolf.
Yeah, he was mixing it, and August 22nd was his birthday, but that was a day of work. And those
25th?
guys,
Not
the
yours.
24th, they
24th,
decided
right.
that was like a Sunday. We took that day off.
And
And he busted my balls about all
the
day
rest
on the
of the-
22nd. He
yeah.
said, "Yeah, I'm mixing the record. You're assistant, but I guess I'm working on my birthday."
Yeah. That's a grudge I hold to this
To
day.
this day,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
calls me on my birthday, like, "You working today?"
It's amazing though how all of us, a lot of us, has stayed in touch. You know what I mean?
All the record playing guys.
Yeah. Like Jay, I was with Justin Niebank last night. Do you guys know who Justin
I
is?
know who he
Yeah,
is,
he is the mixer. Not only in Nashville, but he's done some other big records.
yeah,
He's a great friend. He wanted to meet Jay so bad. So last night we
Nice.
all went out to dinner. But I was telling Justin, I says, Jay was at my house last year, and I was playing him something, and I was tapping my foot, and he says, stop tapping your foot because it disturbed him. And then he was listening to a mix, and it was getting to the fade, and I just hit stop. And, would you do that? Why'd you stop it? And he's every chance he gets, he likes to give me little hints in life.
Right.
And to this day, when I'm with someone,
Yeah.
I do not tap. And I would never just hit stop. I might go, all right, I'm going to turn that. I start talking and lower the volume kind of thing, But he is, Jay. I learned the major thing I learned from Jay was how to act in the session.
Yeah.
That's a lot that they taught us back then.
Yeah.
And I mentioned Blackbird Academy too. They're obviously from Blackbird. I mean, a few years ago, John realized that not many people are using the studio a lot anymore because they come in and track and then they work at home.
Yeah.
So he had to think of other ways, and some other studios were doing the same thing, making schools, and
Right.
so they came up with the Blackbird Academy. It's all through legal terms, a lot of legal things they got to do, but
Right.
it's a 6-month course. And I was always the one. Friends of mine, we would talk like, how are you going to teach these kids? How are they going to retain all that in 6 months? That's a lot to learn, but they pulled it off, and they were rated the second best place
Audio
to learn
school.
to Berkeley.
Nice.
And they have a great program there. I would highly recommend anybody listening who wants to take a course in recording, that's the place to go. And they have a great reputation, and a lot of their students are getting major jobs.
So maybe I should try that.
Maybe you should try that. But
You couldn't get in.
And I talk to them. I do hey Steve, would you do a class mixing in the box? So I teach them how to mix in the box in 6 hours. I'm sure it took you a little longer to learn how to mix, but
Right, but the way like you guys in particular learned was not
Yes.
at school.
Right. Yes, we learned on the job.
And we've talked about this before. Like, there's a lot of shenanigans going on behind the scenes, but and when we talk about it all the time, it sounds like that's what it was. A lot of like getting high and fucking around. But I know when you guys were on the dates, it was serious.
Yeah, when you close
shit.
the door and you start mixing,
It was
you
serious
they're
shit.
fucking
Oh,
around.
very, very serious.
No fucking
And
around.
we all
There was no
got into
fucking
it.
around.
No fucking
Yeah.
around. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
But it like in rehashing a lot of the stories, it sounds like, hey man, it was like a,
It was like one big party.
Yeah.
and it might have been after work, or
Right,
in the,
right,
in
right,
the, in the
right.
side rooms or
Yeah.
whatever. But it was,
It was a lot of work. A lot of work.
and a lot of it was learning
Yep.
how to be in the room. Mm-hmm. You know, make sure it's sharpened pencil. There's so much of it
Yes.
that I'm not sure, you know, they teach at schools. I wouldn't know that, but
You know, that here's the thing that I tell the kids or interns, like when they go make a run for lunch. I said, listen, this is a test right here. You mess up this lunch order, I'm not sure an engineer is going to want you in their session because you might mess up, you know.
especially if it's an Italian engineer.
But there was this one intern, Jeff, who was like, can you go get... Yes, he was so up. And he got the order right all the time.
Right.
I got him a gig at Blackbird. I said, you
Right.
got to keep this kid.
Yeah.
The other thing, too, I says, you know, like we used to learn how to make sure your pencils were sharp and this and that. That's just as important as getting
Yes.
the right mic. You know, so it's, those days are gone a little bit. But, you know, just, you know,
Well,
do
but
as
you know
much
what-
I got the kid Jeremy,
Yeah.
who's up at
Well,
Kaleidoscope, and
I
he's
think-
my guy. And I give him
think-
a hard time about shit, but I also,
Because of the way you came up, you train your guys.
I'm training him
with
like
that same-
Bill trained me.
Yep.
Except the
Or
road.
Steve trained me.
John, was the assistant job harder during our time or during today's times?
Our time.
Why do you think that?
Because when you were mixing, you had to rewind tape delays.
Right,
and I had to,
yes.
remember on your record, I had to do the moves on the pieces of the outboard.
Oh, well, we all, you know, that was telling everybody, it's like during Freeze Frame with Dave Thoner, there were 5 of us mixing that record.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing, too, that I tell the kids, like,
Pre-automation.
Pre-automation, and you didn't know what you had until you played it back.
Right.
Right. And then these days, if I'm mixing, you know, I'm in the box running flying faders, and Jeremy could just be hanging out, like sitting on the couch reading, or just, you know, not even running the tape machine because the Pro Tools. I'm here. I just hit that like this.
Yes, John.
So
yes.
it's a little easier. I mean, tracking, maybe they still run around and do
But
shit.
we would never, even if there was a remote, we would never sit down and read a magazine.
But you know what I mean? On their phones. We
Yeah,
didn't
and
have
that's
phones back
something
then.
that I do tell my assistants that, you know, they're reading magazines or something. It's like, you got to pay attention to this session.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, too, is now with Pro Tools, you want a really good assistant who knows Pro Tools.
Yeah.
You need a Pro Tools guy.
Oh, yeah. And
But at the same token, I tell them, I say, look, don't look at the monitor. Look out there.
Right.
Because as soon as someone does this, you have to stop immediately. Don't always look at the thing. You got to pay attention. Maybe look and keep your hand on the thing like we used to do, right?
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, cool.
You're the man.
This was great, man.
Steve,
Stewart,
how great,
thank you
yeah.
very much. I really appreciate it.
Me and Stewie want to thank all you Gear Clubbers for listening to this crazy podcast we do. If you can, leave a review on iTunes. It really makes a difference. And don't be shy. We love hearing from you guys on the social media at Gear Club Podcast. Don't forget to go to gearclubpodcast.com for Spotify playlists, links and photos for the episodes, and my favorite hot sauce of the month.